Section 11 of The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 2. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Min. The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 2, by Cao Xueqin. Translated by Henry Bancroft Joly. Chapter 30, Part 1. Baochai avails herself of the excuse afforded her by a fan to administer a couple of raps, while Chunling traces in an absent frame of mind the outlines of the character Qiang. A looker-on appears on the scene. Lin Daiyu herself, for we will now resume our narrative, was also ever since her tiff with Baoyu, full of self-condemnations. Yet, as she did not see why she should run after him, she continued, day and night, as despondent as she would have been had she lost something or other belonging to her. Zijuan surmised her sentiments. As regards what happened the other day, she advised her, you were after all, miss, a little too hasty, for if others don't understand the temperaments of Baoyu's, have you and I surely also no idea about it? Besides, haven't there been already 1 or 2 rows on account of that very jade? Cui, exclaimed Daiyu, have you come on behalf of others to find fault with me? But however was I hasty? Why did you, smiled Zijuan, take the scissors and cut that tassel when there was no good reason for it? So isn't Baoyu less to blame than yourself, miss? I've always found his behaviors towards you, miss, without a fault. It's all that touchy dispositions of yours which make you so often perverse, that induces him to act as he does. Lin Daiyu had every wish to make some suitable reply, when she heard someone calling at the door. Zijuan discerned the tone of voice. This sounds like Baoyu's voice, she smiled. I expect he's come to make his apologies. I won't have anyone open the door, Daiyu cried at these words. Here you are in the wrong again, miss, Zijuan observed. How will it ever do to let him get a sunstroke and come to some harm on a day like this, and under such a scorching sun? Saying this, she speedily walked out and opened the door. It was indeed Baoyu. While ushering him in, she gave him a smile. I imagined, she said, that you would never again put your foot inside our door, Master Secundus, but here you are, once more and quite unexpectedly. You have by dint of talking, Baoyu laughed, made much ado of nothing, and why shouldn't I come when there's no reason for me to keep away? Were I even to die, my spirit too will come 100 times a day. But is cousin quite well? She is, replied Zijuan, physically all right, but mentally her resentment is not quite over. I understand, continued Baoyu with a smile, but resentment for what? With this inquiry, he wended his steps inside the apartment. He then caught sight of Lin Daiyu, reclining on a bed in the act of crying. Daiyu had not, in fact, shed a tear, but hearing Baoyu break in upon her, she could not help feeling upset. She found it impossible, therefore, to prevent her tears from rolling down her cheeks. Baoyu assumed a smiling expression and drew near the bed. Cousin, are you quite well again? He inquired. Daiyu simply went on drying her tears and made no reply of any kind. Baoyu approached the bed and sat on the edge of it. I know, he smiled, that you are not vexed with me, but had I not come, third parties would have been allowed to notice my absence, and it would have appeared to them as if we had had another quarrel. And had I to wait until they came to reconcile us, would we not, by that time, become perfect strangers? It would be better, supposing you wish to beat me or blow me up, that you should please yourself and do so now, but whatever you do, don't give me the cold shoulder. Continuing, he proceeded to call her my dear cousin for several tens of times. Daiyu had resolved not to pay any more heed to Baoyu. When she, however, now heard Baoyu urge, don't let us allow others to know anything about our having had a quarrel, as it will look as if we had become thorough strangers, it once more became evident to her from this single remark that she was really dearer and nearer to him than any of the other girls. so she could not refrain from saying sobbingly, "You needn't have come to chaff me. I couldn't presume henceforward to be on friendly terms with you, Master Secundus. You should treat me as if I were gone." At these words, Baoyu gave way to laughter. "Where are you off to?" he inquired. "I'm going back home," answered Daiyu. "I'll go along with you then," smiled Baoyu. "But if I die?" asked Daiyu. "Well, if you die," rejoined Baoyu, "I'll become a bones." The moment Daiyu caught this reply, she hung down her head. "You must, I presume, be bent upon dying," she cried. "But what stuff and nonsense is this you are talking? You've got so many beloved elder and younger cousins in your family, and how many bodies will you have to go and become bonzes when by and by they all pass away? But tomorrow I'll tell them about this to judge for themselves what your motives are." Baoyu was himself aware of the fact that this rejoinder had been recklessly spoken, and he was seized with regret. His face immediately became suffused with blushes. He lowered his head and had not the courage to utter one word more. Fortunately, however, there was no one present in the room. Daiyu stared at him for ever so long with eyes fixed straight on him, but losing control over her temper, "Ai!" she shouted, "can't you speak?" Then, when she perceived Baoyu reduced to such straits as to turn purple, she clenched her teeth and spitefully gave him on the forehead a fillip with her finger. "Huh!" she cried, gnashing her teeth. "This." But just as she had pronounced these two words, she heaved another sigh, and picking up her handkerchief, she wiped her tears. Baoyu treasured at one time numberless tender things in his mind, which he meant to tell her, but feeling also, while he smarted under the sting of self-reproach for the indiscretion he had committed, Daiyu gave him a rap. He was utterly powerless to open his lips, much though he may have liked to speak. So he kept on sighing and snivelling to himself. With all these things therefore to work upon his feelings, he unwillingly melted into tears. He tried to find his handkerchief to dry his face with, but unexpectedly discovering that he had again forgotten to bring one with him, he was about to make his coat sleeve answer the purpose, when Daiyu, albeit her eyes were watery, noticed at a glance that he was going to use the brand new coat of grey-colored gauze he wore, and while wiping her own, she turned herself round and seized a silk kerchief thrown over the pillow, and thrust it into Baoyu's lap. But without saying a word, she screened her face and continued sobbing. Baoyu saw the handkerchief she threw, and hastily snatching it, he wiped his tears. Then, drawing nearer to her, he put out his hand and clasped her hand in his, and smilingly said to her, "You've completely lacerated my heart, and do you still cry? But let's go. I'll come along with you and see our venerable grandmother." Daiyu thrust his hand aside. "Who wants to go hand in hand with you?" she cried. "Here we grow older day after day, but we're still so full of brazen-faced effrontery that we don't even know what right means." But scarcely had she concluded before she heard a voice say aloud, "They are all right." Baoyu and Daiyu were little prepared for this surprise, and they were startled out of their senses. Turning around to see who it was, they caught sight of Lady Feng, running in, laughing and shouting. "Our old lady," she said, "is over there giving way to anger against heaven and earth. She would insist upon my coming to find out whether you were reconciled or not. There's no need for me to go and see, I told her. They will before the expiry of 3 days be friends again of their own accord. Our venerable ancestor, however, called me to account and maintained that I was lazy, so here I come. But my words have in very deed turned out true. I don't see why you two should always be wrangling. For 3 days you are on good terms, and for 2 on bad. You've become more and more like children, and here you are now, hand in hand, blubbering. But why did you again, yesterday, become like black-eyed fighting cocks? Don't you yet come with me to see your grandmother and make an old lady like her set her mind at ease a bit?" While reproaching them, she clutched Daiyu's hand and was trudging away, when Daiyu turned her head round and called out for her servant girls, but not one of them was in attendance. What do you want them for again? Lady Feng asked. I'm here to wait on you. Still speaking, she pulled her along on their way, with Baoyu following in their footsteps. Then, making their exit out of the garden gate, they entered Dowager Lady Jia's suite of rooms. I said that it was superfluous for anyone to trouble, Lady Feng smiled, as they were sure of themselves to become reconciled. But you, dear ancestor, so little believed it that you insisted upon my going to act the part of mediator. Yet, when I got there, with the intentions of inducing them to make it up, I found them, though one did not expect it, in each other's company, confessing their faults and laughing and chatting just like a yellow eagle clutching the feet of a kite were those two hanging on to each other. So where was the necessity for anyone to go? These words evoked laughter from everyone in the room. Baochai, however, was present at the time, so Lin Daiyu did not retort, but went and ensconced herself in a seat near her grandmother. When Baoyu noticed that no one had anything to say, he smilingly addressed himself to Baochai. On cousin Xuepan's birthday, he remarked, I happened again to be unwell, so not only did I not send him any presents, but I failed to go and knock on my head before him. Yet cousin knows nothing about my having been ill, and it would seem to him that I had no wish to go, and that I brought forward excuses so as to avoid paying him a visit. If tomorrow you find any leisure, cousin, do therefore explain matters for me to him. This is too much punctiliousness, smiled Baochai. Even had you insisted upon going, we wouldn't have been so arrogant as to let you put yourself to the trouble, and how much less when you were not feeling well. You two are cousins and are always to be found together the whole day. If you encourage such ideas, some estrangement will, after all, arise between you. Cousin, continued Baoyu smilingly, you know what to say, and so long as you are lenient with me, all will be all right. But how is it, he went on to ask, that you haven't gone over to see the theatricals? I couldn't stand the heat, rejoined Baochai. I looked on while two plays were being sung, but I found it so intensely hot that I felt anxious to retire. But the visitors not having dispersed, I had to give as an excuse that I wasn't feeling up to the mark, and so came away at once. Baoyu at these words could not but feel ill at ease. All he could do was to feign another smile. It's no wonder, he observed, that they compare you, cousin, to Yang Guifei, for she was too fat and afraid of hot weather. Hearing this, Baochai involuntarily flew into a violent rage. Yet, when about to call him to task, she found that it would not be nice for her to do so. After some reflections, the color rushed to her cheeks. Smiling ironically twice, I may resemble, she said, Yang Guifei, but there's not one of you young men, whether senior or junior, good enough to play the part of Yang Guozhong. While they were bandying words, a servant girl, Jinger, lost sight of her fan and laughingly remarked to Baochai, It must be you, Miss Bao, who have put my fan away somewhere or other. Dear mistress, do let me have it. You'd better be mindful, rejoined Baochai, shaking her finger at her. With whom have I ever been up to jokes that you come and suspect me? Have I hitherto laughed and smirked with you? There's that whole lot of girls, go and ask them about it. At his suggestions, Jinger made her escape. The consciousness then burst upon Baoyu that he had again been inconsiderate in his speech, in the presence of so many persons, and he was overcome by a greater sense of shame than when, a short while back, he had been speaking with Lin Daiyu. Precipitately turning himself round, he went, therefore, and talked to the others as well. The sight of Baoyu poking fun at Baochai gratified Daiyu immensely. She was just about to put in her word and also seize the opportunity of chaffing her, but as Jinger unawares asked for her fan and Baochai added a few more remarks, she at once changed her purpose. Cousin Baochai, she inquired, what two plays did you hear? Baochai caught the expressions of gratifications in Daiyu's countenance, and concluded that she had for a certainty heard the raillery recently indulged in by Baoyu, and that it had fallen in with her own wishes, and hearing her also suddenly ask the question she did, she answered with a significant laugh. What I saw was Li Kui blows up Song Jiang and subsequently again tender his apologies. Baoyu smiled. "How is it," he said, "that with such wide knowledge of things new as well as old, and such general information as you possess, you aren't even up to the name of a play, and that you've come out with such a whole string of words? Why, the real name of the play is Carrying a Birch and Begging for a Punishment." "Is it truly called Carrying a Birch and Begging for Punishment?" Baochai asked with love. "But you people know all things new and old, so are able to understand the import of carrying a birch and begging for punishment. As for me, I've no idea whatever what carrying a birch and begging for punishment implies." One sentence was scarcely ended when Baoyu and Daiyu felt guilty in their consciences, and by the time they heard all she said, they were quite flushed from shame. Lady Feng did not, it is true, fathom the gist of what had been said, but at the sight of the expression betrayed on the faces of the three cousins, she readily got an inkling of it. "On this broiling hot day," she inquired, laughing also, "who still eats raw ginger?" None of the party could make out the import of her insinuations. "There's no one eating raw ginger," they said. Lady Feng intentionally then brought her hands to her cheeks, and rubbing them, she remarked with an air of utter astonishment, "Since there's no one eating raw ginger, how is it that you're all so fiery in the face?" Hearing this, Baoyu and Daiyu waxed more uncomfortable than ever. So much so that Baochai, who meant to continue the conversations, did not think it nice to say anything more when she saw how utterly abashed Baoyu was and how changed his manner. Her only course was, therefore, to smile and hold her peace. And as the rest of the inmates had not the faintest notions of the drift of the remarks exchanged between the four of them, they consequently followed her lead and put on a smile. In a short while, however, Baochai and Lady Feng took their leave. "You've also tried your strength with them," Daiyu said to Baoyu laughingly, "but they are far worse than I. Is everyone as simple in mind and dull of tongue as I am as to allow people to say whatever they like?" Baoyu was inwardly giving way to that unhappiness which had been occasioned by Baochai's touchiness, so when he also saw Daiyu approach him and taunt him, displeasure keener than ever was aroused in him. A desire then exerted itself to speak out his mind to her. But dreading lest Daiyu should hear in one of her sensitive moods, he, needless to say, stifled his anger and straightway left the apartment in a state of mental depressions. End of chapter 30, part 1.